So you want to bank in Asia. Maybe you're dreaming of a Singapore bank account, or you need a regional business account to pay local suppliers, or maybe you just want an account in one of the last secrecy jurisdictions worth considering anywhere in the world. If that sounds like you, I'm going to dig into 5 Asian banking hubs, share the kind of details that most people completely overlook, and tell you who should and should not bank in each of these jurisdictions. But first, in case you're wondering who I am and why am I even qualified to talk about Asian banking, my name is Chris and I'm the head of banking relationships here at GlobalBanks. We help entrepreneurs and investors solve cross-border banking challenges for both themselves and their businesses. And this includes opening business, personal, premier, and private bank accounts in top banking jurisdictions across Asia. Now, one quick note before jumping in. If you prefer to have access to all of this information offline at your fingertips, you can download our entire guide on where to bank in Asia for free in the pinned comment below. This guide is going to walk you through all of the details I'm about to share, plus it's also going to give you additional details on each of these countries. So don't forget to grab your copy before the video is over. All right, Asia. Where should you bank? And equally important, where should you not bank? Now, generally speaking, we break down Asian banking opportunities into 3 types of banking hubs. This includes international banking hubs, regional banking hubs, and domestic banking hubs. Basically, are banks in a given country willing to serve international clients, clients from the region, or domestic clients with local residency or local operating businesses. Now, obviously, there is room for negotiation here, so if you come across a regional or domestic banking hub where you really want to open a bank account, you can usually still open accounts if you can demonstrate sufficient ties. I'm going to dig into this a bit more as we discuss the specific countries and what you will need to open in each of them as we go through the list. So let's dig into our first Asian banking jurisdiction, which is Hong Kong. Now, we view Hong Kong as a medium risk banking hub. It's suitable for certain offshore accounts as well as private accounts and certain business accounts, especially those looking to access China. And while remote account opening it is possible in Hong Kong, it's difficult to open here, and deposits they tend to be between medium and high when compared to other banking jurisdictions in Asia. Now, I like Hong Kong, but I used to like it a lot more from a banking perspective. And we have helped many companies open accounts there. I've banked there, members of our team have banked there, people with crazy offshore structures with zero ties to Hong Kong used to bank there. In fact, for the past few decades, Hong Kong was the destination for offshore banking, especially if you had an offshore structure. And for over a century, it was the main gateway for foreign companies and investors looking to get into Asia. But Hong Kong banking started to turn sour around 7 years ago, and a new security law imposed by China in 2020 was the final blow. So while other folks still think it's one of the best places to bank offshore, we offer a much more cautious stance, and in most cases, we do suggest that people should consider banking elsewhere instead. Now, while it would be easy for us to blame China for the demise of Hong Kong as an international banking center, that would not be entirely fair. Hong Kong was already shifting away from international and offshore banking long before the new security law came into effect. And the reason for this is pretty simple. Like a lot of hyper-popular banking hubs, Hong Kong banks were totally cashed up. They didn't need any more money, and they became extremely particular about who they let in. Basically, if you weren't coming in at the private banking level, or your company didn't have local operations, local directors, or even local shareholders, they didn't want you. So while Hong Kong used to be an international banking hub, in most cases, it's no longer suitable for most people, unless they're looking to access China, Hong Kong, or the surrounding countries. Of course, we still have lots of people asking us about banking in Hong Kong, and in certain cases, Hong Kong might still be a suitable option. But you are going to need a good reason to bank here, and you'll need to demonstrate ties or a large deposit even to get in. If that sounds like an approach you're interested in taking and you do want to explore Hong Kong banking further, feel free to go to our website, contact us however you like, and we'll see if we can assist you with the process. Now, this next country is a very interesting, lesser known banking hub. In fact, maybe we should just call it a secrecy jurisdiction because that's actually what it is. And I'm guessing that at least 99% of the people that end up watching this video have never thought about banking here. But before I share this country with you, can you do me a quick favor? If you find this style of video, where I break down individual countries, helpful or interesting, can you give it a quick like? That way we know to keep making more videos like this for you in the future. So this lesser known secrecy banking jurisdiction in Asia that 99% of people have never considered for banking is Taiwan. From a banking perspective, we view Taiwan as a medium risk jurisdiction, and you can open both personal and business accounts here. but opening accounts is very difficult, and remote opening is almost never an option, though deposits here, they're reasonable. Again, this is a very interesting banking hub, and most people, they never consider it. It's similar to Switzerland in the sense that it has its own Banking Secrecy Act, it's called Article 48, and thanks in large part to China's efforts to completely block Taiwan on the international stage, Taiwan is not subject to FATF reviews or basically any international regulatory oversight because it's not a member of the OECD. Plus, many banks in Taiwan, they have dedicated offshore banking units that cater to foreign clients. And thanks to the large industrial base, there's actually a wide range of international banks that are active on the island. So should you bank in Taiwan? Maybe. In fact, Taiwan has experienced a surge of entrepreneurs and businesses from Hong Kong over the past few years, in large part due to China's takeover and the looming uncertainty. But like Hong Kong, there are still questions about the future of Taiwan as well, at least geopolitically. Certain people believe that China poses a real threat to Taiwan. Others believe that Taiwan will simply be controlled by China economically. And smarter people sit on the sidelines to wait and see what happens. Now, I'm not going to be commenting on the likelihood of a conflict, but what I will say is that it usually makes sense to maintain minimum deposits in countries or regions where there is heightened levels of uncertainty. Though, like I said, opening accounts here, it's very difficult and you will need to show up in person. So if you do decide to bank here, you will need to have a very good reason to do so. Now, let's switch gears and look at a more familiar Asian banking hub, which is Labuan. We consider Labuan a medium risk jurisdiction where you can open both offshore and certain business accounts. Not surprisingly, remote opening is possible, and both deposits as well as the opening difficulty, they're medium when compared to other countries in the region. Now, if you're not familiar with Labuan, it's a tiny island territory off of Malaysia. In fact, Malaysia itself can be interesting from a banking perspective as well, and I will be taking a closer look at Malaysia in an upcoming video. So if that's interesting to you, make sure you hit subscribe so you get notified when we post that video. Now, the way that we generally describe banking in Labuan is that it's the Malta of Asia. And what I mean by this is that Labuan is primarily a booking center for large financial institutions, shifting accounts from various jurisdictions for tax efficiency, regulatory reasons, risk management, etc., etc. So it's not exactly an offshore banking hub that is easily accessible to most people or businesses. But there are certain banking options that foreign non-residents can access, as well as certain companies, including high-risk entities, though this is often limited to those entities actually registered in Labuan. The main takeaway here is that while there are options available, Labuan is not for everyone. Not all banks here will accept non-residents, and smaller businesses will have very few options to choose from. For this reason, we typically suggest that clients with Labuan offshore companies, structures, and prospective customers with ties to Labuan or neighboring countries consider banking here. Also, if you can open here, it's likely that you'll be able to open in better banking hubs elsewhere, unless you have a high-risk profile or you can't meet deposit requirements in better banking jurisdictions. The point is, before you settle on a Labuan bank account, make sure you consider all of the options available to you or your business before applying. Okay, so this next country is a gambler's paradise. And you've probably guessed it, it's Macau. No surprise, a lot of money moves through Macau, so this isn't a retail banking hub. Instead, if you want to open an account here, it's going to be a premier or private banking account. Deposits, they're going to be medium to high compared to other Asian banking hubs, and remote opening is not an option. Now, even if you've not been to Macau before, you might know it as the Las Vegas of Asia. But Macau actually overshadows Las Vegas, bringing in twice as much money per year with half the number of casinos. And thanks to the high-risk nature of Macau's most important industry, banks here, they can be a bit more flexible. So who should bank here? Well, like most banking hubs, if you have a connection to the jurisdiction, it could make sense, especially if you're a frequent visitor or a regular customer of the local casinos. That said, unless you have a really good reason to bank in Macau, it's almost guaranteed that you can find better banking options elsewhere. That's assuming you don't have a very difficult citizenship, residency, or source of income, such as gambling. If you do, Macau might be worth considering. Now, I have another Asian banking hub for you, and this one you've definitely heard of, and maybe you've even tried to bank there yourself. And that is Singapore. Singapore is low risk. It offers premier and private banking options to a wide range of foreign non-resident clients with very reasonable deposits, and accounts they can be opened remotely, depending on your citizenship and residency. But opening is a challenge. And if you've seen any of the other videos where I've talked about Singapore banking, you already know two things. First is that Singapore banks are excellent. And second is that Singapore banks are very difficult to access, but not impossible. So why is Singapore so good at banking? Well, it's a pretty simple equation. Singapore banks, they're fiscally responsible, they're well capitalized, and generally they offer decent customer service at the higher service levels. And as I've said before, the banking industry is a reflection of the country. Singapore is one of the best managed countries on earth, which matters when you're trying to decide where to open accounts. Now, bottom line, Singapore is an excellent regulatory environment that is home to solid banks, both domestic Singapore banks, as well as some of the top international banks from most of the major banking hubs around the world. And while most people do say it's impossible to open Singapore bank accounts today, as a foreign non-resident, especially remotely, that is factually incorrect. And I know this because we help clients do it all the time. So if you want more details on opening in Singapore as a foreign non-resident, along with the other countries that we've just covered and 5 other Asian banking hubs that you might want to consider, you can grab the free guide from the pinned comment below. And if you want an update from recent conversations that I had with Singapore bankers, including details on how to open Singapore bank accounts as a foreign non-resident from the US, UK, EU, Canada, Australia, and many other Western countries, you can click right here and I'll give you the step-by-step process so you can start opening accounts yourself. So go ahead, give that a click, and I'll see you right over there.